Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Terminator Salvation. Terminator Salvation is a 2009 American post-apocalyptic science fiction war film directed by McG. Starring Christian Bale and Sam Worthington, with Anton Yelchin, Bloodgood, Bryce Dallas Howard, Common Michael Ironside and Helena Bonham Carter in supporting roles. It is the fourth installment of the Terminator film series, in a departure from the previous installments, which were set between 1984 and 2004, and used time travel as a key plot element. Salvation is a post-apocalyptic film set in the year 2018, 14 years after the events of Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. It focuses on the war between Skynet's machine network and humanity. The remnants of the world's military have organized as the Resistance, fighting against Skynet's killing machines. Bale portrays John Connor, Resistance fighter and central character to the franchise, while Worthington portrays Cyborg Marcus Wright. Yelchin plays as a young Kyle Reese, a character first introduced in The Terminator, and the film depicts the origin of the T-800 Terminator, played by Roland Kickinger, who replaces Arnold Schwarzenegger as the eponymous character, though CGI was used to recreate Schwarzenegger's facial likeness from the original film with his consent. After a troubled pre-production, with a Halcyon company acquiring the rights for the franchise from Andrew G. Wagner and Mario Casa, and several writers working on the screenplay. Filming began in May 2008 in New Mexico and ran for 77 days. Terminator Salvation was released on May 21, 2009 in the United States, and Canada followed by early June releases in the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. Warner Brothers handled the North American release, while Columbia Pictures handled the international release. The film grossed over $371 million worldwide and was met with mixed reviews. A reboot of the film franchise occurred with the release of Terminator Genisys in 2015. Plot. In 2003, Drive, Serena Kogan of Cyberdyne Systems convinces death row inmate Marcus Wright to sign over his body for medical research following his execution. 1 year later, the automated Skynet system is activated and becomes self-aware, perceiving humans as a threat to its existence. It starts a nuclear holocaust to eradicate them in the event known as Judgment Day. In 2018, John Connor leads an attack on a Skynet base, where he discovers human prisoners and schematics for a new type of Terminator, incorporating living tissue, the T-800. John survives a violent assault on the base, which is destroyed. Following John's departure, Marcus emerges from the base's wreckage and begins walking towards Los Angeles. John returns to the Resistance headquarters located aboard a nuclear submarine and is briefed by General Ashdown that the Resistance has discovered a hidden signal containing a code protocol, which they believe can initiate a permanent shutdown of Skynet's machines. Working on this intelligence, the human militia plans to launch an offensive against the Skynet base in San Francisco. It is decided among the Resistance that the offensive will commence in 4 days due to an intercepted kill list created by Skynet, which plans to terminate the Resistance's command staff within the same time frame. John learns he is second on this list following Kyle Reese. The Resistance leaders are unaware of Kyle's importance, but John knows Kyle will eventually travel back in time and become his father, and realizes that Skynet has learned of this fact. Arriving at the ruins of Los Angeles, Marcus encounters Kyle and a mute child named Star during a violent skirmish with Skynet's machines. Kyle and Star are subsequently abducted and taken prisoner by Skynet. Later, 2 Resistance A-10 airplanes are shot down while trying to intercept a machine transport. Wright locates downed pilot Blair Williams. They then make their way to John's base, where thereafter Marcus is wounded by a magnetic landmine, attempting to save his life. The Resistance fighters discover that Marcus is indeed a cyborg with a mechanical endoskeleton and a partially artificial cerebral cortex. Although Marcus believes himself to be human, John and his wife Kate think that Marcus has been sent to execute him and orders him to be killed. Blair helps Marcus escape. During the pursuit, Marcus saves John's life from Skynet's Hydrobots, and the two make a bargain. Marcus will enter Skynet's headquarters in San Francisco to help John rescue Kyle and the other prisoners if he lets him live. John pleads with General Ashdown to delay the offensive so he can formulate a plan to extract the human captives, but Ashdown refuses and relieves John of his command. However, the Resistance disobeys Ashdown's orders and instead await John's signal. Marcus enters the base, interfaces with the computer, and disables perimeter defenses so that Connor can infiltrate the cell block and release human prisoners. Wright learns from Skynet that he was created and built from the original Wright's corpse to lure John to the base. When the Resistance launches its attack, John will be killed, achieving the goal that Skynet had failed to accomplish in the past. The hidden signal that the Resistance received earlier is revealed to have been a ruse, and Skynet uses it to track down and destroy the command submarine. With the Resistance's leaders aboard, Marcus tears out the hardware linking him to Skynet, and assists John in battling the new T-800 Terminator. Marcus is soon outclassed in strength, and temporarily disabled until John comes to his aid. John eventually defeats the T-800, while John destroys the Skynet base by rigging together explosives. John, Marcus, Kyle, and Star are lifted out. John, though, was seriously wounded during the assault, with a life-threatening injury to his heart. Marcus offers his own heart for transplantation, sacrificing himself to save John. As he recovers, John radios to other Resistance fighters that, although this battle has been won, the war is still not over. Cast. Arnold Schwarzenegger's facial likeness was utilized via CGI, with a mold of his face made in 1984 scanned to create the digital makeup. Development. In 1999, 2 years after C2 Pictures purchased the rights to the franchise, 2 Terminator films' premises were mapped out and were supposed to be developed simultaneously. Teddy Sarafian was hired to write Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, which he eventually received shared story credit for, while David C. Wilson was to write Terminator 4. Before any revisions were done, T3 initially took place in 2001, and revolved around the first attacks between Skynet and humans. T4 would follow immediately afterward, and centered primarily on the war scene in the first 2 films. Warner Brothers gave the film the code name Project Angel. Following the release of Terminator 3 in 2003, producers Andrew G. Wagner and Mario Casa contracted Nick Stahl and Claire Danes to return as John Connor and Kate Brewster in another film. Director Jonathan Mostow helped develop the script written by John Brancato and Michael Ferris, and was set to begin production in 2005 after completing another film. It was known by then that Arnold Schwarzenegger's role would be limited, as he had assumed office as governor of California. The producers sought to have Warner Brothers finance the picture as they did for Terminator 3. In 2005, Stahl said John and Kate would be recast as the story jumped forward in time. By 2006, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer was set to distribute the 4th film as part of the new CEO Harry Sloan's scheme to make the studio a viable Hollywood player. On May 9, 2007, it was announced that production rights to the Terminator series had passed from the feuding Wagner and Casa to the Halcyon Company. The producers hoped to start a new trilogy based on the franchise. The purchase was financed with a loan by Pacificor, a hedge fund from Santa Monica. By July 19, the project was in legal limbo due to a lawsuit between MGM and a Halcyon subsidiary T-Asset. MGM had an exclusive window of 30 days to negotiate for distribution of the Terminator films. When negotiating for Terminator 4, Halcyon rejected their initial proposal and MGM suspended negotiations. After the 30 days were over, MGM claimed that the period during which negotiations were suspended did not count and their exclusive period was still open. Halcyon asked a court for an injunction allowing them to approach other distributors. Later, the lawsuit was settled and MGM got a 30-day right of first refusal to finance and distribute the fifth Terminator film. Finally, Warner Bros. Paid $60 million to acquire the United States distribution rights of Terminator Salvation. Sony Pictures also paid just over $100 million to acquire this film's distribution rights in all international territories. Writing. McG signed on to direct as the first two films were among his favorites, and he had even cast Robert Patrick in his films. Though he was initially unsure about flogging a dead horse, he felt the post-apocalyptic setting allowed the film to be different enough so as not to be just an inferior sequel. The idea that events in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines altered the future allowed them to be flexible with their presentation of the futuristic world. McG met with the series co-creator James Cameron, and although he neither blessed nor denigrated the project, Cameron told the new director he had faced a similar challenge when following Ridley Scott's Alien. With Aliens, he maintained two elements of the previous films, that John is an outsider to the authorities and someone of future importance is being protected, and in this film, it is Kyle Reese. The first full screenplay for the film was written by Terminator 3 writers John Brancato and Michael Ferris, who received full screenplay credit. Paul Haggis rewrote Brancato and Ferris' script, and Sean Ryan made another revision 3 weeks before filming. Jonathan Nolan also wrote on set, which led to McG to say, "I would have to characterize Jonah as the lead writer of the film." In response to whether or not Nolan would receive a writing credit for his contribution, McG went on to say, "I don't know how the WGA rules work, but honest to goodness, we did the heaviest lifting with Jonah." Nolan contributed to the film after Bale signed on and created Connor's arc of becoming a leader. Anthony Zuiker contributed to the script as well. So extensive were the rewrites that Alan Dean Foster decided to rewrite the entire novelization after submitting it to his publisher, because the compiled shooting script was very different from the one he was given beforehand. In the early script drafts, John was a secondary character. Producer James Middleton explained, "Ben-Hur was influenced by Jesus Christ, but it was his story. Much in that way, this new main character will be influenced by John Connor." The original ending was to have John killed and his image kept alive by the Resistance by grafting his skin onto Marcus's cybernetic body. Marcus would have then murdered Kate Barnes, Kyle and Star. However, after the ending was leaked on the internet, Warner Bros. Decided to completely change the entire third act of the film. McG and Nolan did continue the Christ element of John's character though, in which he has some followers who believe what he knows about Skynet and others who do not. McG described the film's theme as where you draw the line between machines and humans. The friendship between Marcus, who was executed when humanity still ruled the world, and Kyle Reese illustrates how war and suffering can bring out the best in people, such as when they work together to survive during the Blitz. The title was derived from this second chance given to humanity and to Marcus. In addition to John's efforts to save humanity from the machines, the film's original title was Terminator Salvation, The Future Begins, but this was dropped during filming. Throughout writing, the cast and crew would watch scenes from the three films to pick moments to reference a tribute, including Come With Me If You Want to Live and I'll Be Back, which is uttered by John in this film. MCG found himself having to decide which ideas for references would be included and which would not. An opening scene has John fighting a Terminator on a crashed helicopter, which was storyboarded as a homage to the climax of the original film where his mother Sarah, having broken her leg, is chased by a crippled Terminator. MCG did this to reflect the skills John learned from her. Filming Terminator Salvation had a $200 million budget. The shooting of the film started on May 5, 2008. In New Mexico, with parts of the filming taking place at Kirtland Air Force Base, after the United States Air Force agreed to provide the crew guidance and aircraft. The filmmakers had originally intended to begin filming on March 15 in Budapest or Australia, but a 25% tax rebate and absence of an interest rate cap and floor made the filmmakers seek the cheaper New Mexico because of their elevated budget. To avoid delays caused by a possible 2008 Screen Actors Guild strike in July, all exterior scenes were completed by then so production could restart easily. The shoot ended on July 20, 2008, though some pickups took place in January 2009. In addition to Bale breaking his hand and Worthington hurting his back, special effects technician Mike Menardis almost lost his leg filming an explosion. The sequence required a manhole cover being blown into the air, which hit Menardis and partially severed his leg. MCG noted it was a testament to the gritty style of the film. I say with respect, I didn't want that Star Wars experience of everything's a blue screen, tennis balls and go for it. I had Stan Winston build all the machines. We built all the sets. The explosive power, so you feel that wind and the percussion, and that heat blowing your eyebrows off. And with that you get a couple bumps and bruises on the way, but you get it in an integrity and a realism that hopefully echoes Apocalypse Now. You couldn't say, let's just shoot Apocalypse Now in Burbank. I think it's going to feel just as good. The film used Technicolor's Oz process during post-production. This is a partial silver retention on the interpositive similar to bleach bypass, which will be used to lend to the sense of detachment from the modern world MCG was looking for. Industrial light. To make the desaturated lighting of the CGI realistic and well integrated to the on-set footage, the filmmakers consulted with many scientists about the effects of an abandoned world and nuclear winter. MCG cited Mad Max 2, the original Star Wars trilogy, and Children of Men, as well as the novel The Road, as his visual influences. He instructed his cast to read the latter as well as do Android Stream of Electric Sheep. Like Children of Men, MCG would storyboard scenes so that it would be edited together to resemble a seamless, continuous shot. It took 2 weeks to film a 2-minute shot of Connor getting caught up in a bombing on the Skynet base, where he discovers plans for the T-800. Design and special effects. MCG sought to create as many in-camera elements as possible to make the film more realistic. Many of the settings were hand-built, including an entire control station for the Harvester attack scenes. The Terminator factory was built in an abandoned factory and the design crew consulted robot manufacturer companies for a more realistic depiction. A 20-feet model built and detonated by Kerner Optical was used for the explosion of Skynet's 30-story San Francisco-based lab. The majority of the machines were designed by Martin Lang, a crew member on Cameron's Titanic and Ghosts of the Abyss. MCG described many of the machines as having an H.R. Giger influence. MCG's intent was to create a gritty, tactile 2018 on screen, and Lang concurred the robots would have to be black and degraded as none of them are new. Lang devised aerostats, which are smaller versions of the aerial hunter-killers from the previous films. The aerostats send a signal to the 60-feet humanoid harvesters. They are very big and slow, so they use motor terminators to capture humans, and the harvesters place them in transporters. Lang was unsure of how to design the transporters until he saw a cattle transport while driving through Albuquerque. The film features the first aquatic Skynet robot, the Hydrobot, which Lang modeled on eels, and was built by the animatronics crew, with its exterior made of metal-looking rubber so it could be used in the aquatic scenes. The film features rubber-skinned T-600 and T-700 robots. MCG interpreted Kyle Reese's description in the original film of the T-600 as being easy to spot by making them tall and bulky. For scenes of humans fighting with Terminators, the actors interacted with stuntmen wearing motion capture suits, later replaced by digital robots. For the Moto Terminators, Ducati designers were hired to create the robots, and the on-screen robot was a combination of stuntmen driving actual Ducatis and a Moto Terminator mock-up, as well as a digital Moto Terminator. Visual effects studio Imaginary Forces created the Terminator point-of-view sequences and tried to depict a simple interface free of the frills, anything that a machine would not purely need, and with more software bugs and anomalies. Since the robots of Salvation were not as advanced as the Terminators from the previous films, the majority of the special effects were done by Industrial Light. Salvation was one of the last films that Stan Winston, the visual effects supervisor on the first 3 films, worked on. He died on June 15, 2008, from multiple myeloma, and MCG dedicated the film to him in the end credits. John Rosengrant and Charlie Gibson replaced Winston, and MCG commented that they are trying to achieve something that's never been done before and push the envelope. Asylum Visual Effects created digital plates, Marcus's endoskeleton, and a digital T-600. Rising Sun Pictures did the digital correction of day for night scenes, the destruction of the submarine, and Marcus's robot hand. Music. Danny Elfman began composing the score in January 2009. Beforehand, MCG wanted to hire Gustavo Santaolalla to work on the music for the human characters, while having either Tom York or Johnny Greenwood for Skynet's themes. He wanted to discuss scoring the film with Hans Zimmer, but he was unable to arrange a meeting. MCG met with the Terminator and Terminator 2 composer Brad Fiedel, but was not interested in repeating the sounds Fiedel achieved in his films. However, MCG wanted Elfman to give those themes an ambient sounds of Wagnerian quality. Reprise Records released the soundtrack on May 19, 2009, which included 15 tracks. While Common had expressed interest in writing a song for the soundtrack, Alice in Chains' Rooster is the only featured song. Although not included in the soundtrack, You Could Be Mine, by Guns N' Roses, which was featured in Terminator 2: Judgment Day, can be heard briefly in a scene of the film as well. A remix version of 9 Inch Nails' The Day the World Went Away is played on the film's 3rd theatrical trailer, but is not included in the film or soundtrack. Controversies. During filming, Bale became angry with director of photography Shane Hurlbut for walking onto a set during a scene. He swore and screamed at Hurlbut and threatened to leave the film. Audio of Bale's tirade leaked to the public and went viral. Bale apologized publicly and said he resolved his differences with Hurlbut, explaining that he sometimes has a problem with someone walking on set and that when the incident took place they continued to work together for a number of hours that day. In March 2009, producer Moritz Baumann filed a lawsuit against the Halcyon Company, seeking $160 million. Baumann, who had arranged the transfer of the Terminator rights to Halcyon in May 2007, claimed the company's two managers Derek Anderson and Victor Kubitschek had hijacked the production and refused to give him his $2.5 million share of the production. Baumann alleged budget overruns were the reasons Anderson and Kubitschek did not pay him, and that they had $1 million in debt. Nevertheless, an amicable resolution was reached a month later. Further complications occurred on May 20, 2009, when executive producer Peter D. Graves, who informed Anderson and Kubitschek about the Terminator rights, filed a breach of contract claim for arbitration, alleging that they owe him $750,000. Initial screening. The film was released in North America on May 21, 2009, with Warner Bros. setting the American premiere on May 14, 2009 at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Elsewhere, Sony Pictures Entertainment released the film in most overseas territories on different dates in June. One exception was Mexico, however, because of the swine flu outbreak in the country, which forced Sony to push the release date to July 31, 2009. It is rated PG-13 by the Motion Picture Association of America for intense sequences of sci-fi violence, action, and language. Unlike the first three films, which are rated R, the decision to release the film with a PG-13 rating has met with much criticism from fans as well as the media. The rating decision was made after MCG cut out a shot of Marcus stabbing a thug with a screwdriver, as the director felt disallowing the young audience due to that one shot was unfair. He also deleted a topless scene for Moon Bloodgood because it was a soft moment between a man and a woman that was designed to echo the Kelly McGillis, Harrison Ford moment in Witness, but, in the end, it felt more like a gratuitous moment of a girl taking her top off in an action picture. And I didn't want it to convolute the story or the characters. The producers had expected the rating, because of the modern leniency towards violence in PG-13 films such as the 2007 action film, Live Free or Die Hard. Box office. The film's first nationwide U.S. screenings were at 12 a.m. on Thursday, May 21, 2009. Making $3 million from midnight screenings and earning $13.3 million in its first day, and grossed an additional $42,558,390 on its four-day Memorial Day opening weekend, from 3,530 theaters. It debuted at Behind Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, giving it a lower first weekend take than its predecessor, becoming the first film in the series not to open at and failing to meet Box Office Magazine predictions by 50%. Terminator Salvation was more successful in its international release, opening in 66 of 70 territories through the first week of June and continuing to be the highest-grossing film in the following week. The film's total domestic gross was $125,322,469, along with $246,030,532 from overseas territories, for a worldwide gross of $371,353,001. As of December 2009, the film ranks 14th for the year internationally and 23rd domestically, which puts it below initial expectations in terms of domestic gross and first weekend, as well as overall global take. Home media. The DVD and Blu-ray disc of the film was released on December 1, 2009. The former contains the theatrical cut of the film with a featurette on the Moto Terminators. The Blu-ray features both the theatrical cut and the R-rated director's cut, which is 3 minutes longer with bonus material including maximum movie mode, a video commentary in which director MCG talks about the film while it plays featurettes, a video archive and a digital comic of the first issue of the official film prequel comic. Both versions include a digital copy of the theatrical cut for portable media players. Target stores will be the only retailer to carry the director's cut on DVD. On its first week of retail, Terminator Salvation debuted at the top spot of the Blu-ray charts, and on second in the DVD charts behind Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. The film made $29,811,432 in domestic DVD sales, bringing its total gross to $401,439,971. Tie-ins. In addition to the novelization by Alan Dean Foster, a prequel novel titled Terminator Salvation, From the Ashes by Timothy Zahn was released. 2 further books were inspired by the film, Cold War by Greg Cox and Trial by Fire Again by Zahn. IDW Publishing released a 4-issue prequel comic as well as an adaptation. It follows Connor rallying together the Resistance in 2017, as well as examining normal people overcoming their intolerances to defeat Skynet. Playmates Toys. Sideshow Collectibles Hot Toys character options and DC Unlimited produced merchandise. While Chrysler, Sony, Pizza Hut and 7-Eleven were among the product placement partners. On May 23, 2009, a roller coaster named after the film opened at Six Flags Magic Mountain. In 2011, the ride was no longer licensed and renamed to Apocalypse. A third-person shooter video game of the same name was released on the same week of the release of the film. Christian Bale declined to lend his voice, so Gideon Emery voiced the character of John Connor. The game, however, features the voices of Common and Moon Bloodgood as Barnes and Blair Williams respectively. Despite not appearing in the film, Rose McGowan voiced the character of Angie Salter, an ex-high school teacher. The game is set in 2016, after the events of Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and before the events of Terminator Salvation. Another video game also titled Terminator Salvation was released in 2010 in the arcades. It's a light gun shooter developed by Play Mechanics and published by Raw Thrills. On May 18, 2009, Machinima released Terminator Salvation, the Machinima series, an animated prequel web series set before the video game and the film, comprising 6 episodes. It is about the character Blair Williams and her reaction to the apocalyptic war between machines and humans. It was distributed by Warner Premiere Wonderland Sound and Vision and the Halcyon Company. It is currently for download on iTunes, Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and Amazon Video. Critical response. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported that the film received a 33% approval rating with an average rating of 5/10 based on 267 reviews. The website's consensus reads, with storytelling as robotic as the film's iconic villains, Terminator Salvation offers plenty of great effects but lacks the heart of the original films. By comparison, Metacritic, which assigns a normalized rating out of 100 to reviews, From mainstream critics, the film has received an average score of 49 based on 46 reviews, indicating mixed or average reviews. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, saying that, "After scrutinizing the film, I offer you my summary of the story. Guy dies, finds himself resurrected, meets others, fights. That lasts for almost 2 hours." Michael Rechtschaffen of The Hollywood Reporter wrote that the film isn't the same without Arnold Schwarzenegger and that it misses its dramatic element. Likewise, Claudia Puig of USA Today gave the film a 2/4 and called it predictable with the dramatic elements flatlining. She considered Christian Bale's performance one-dimensional, but found his co-stars to come off better, saying Sam Worthington had a quiet intensity marred only by yelling "no" 3 times in about 10 minutes, and that Anton Yelchin had some of the best lines. Total Films Review gave the film 4/5. With its verdict, the Terminator story recharges with a post-apocalyptic jolt of energy. Frantic and full of welcome ties to the past, it also plows new ground with purpose. Fingers crossed MCG will follow Cameron's lead and serve up a worthy sequel. Devon Faraci of Empire magazine also gave a positive rating of 4 out of 5 stars, saying, "MCG has sparked a moribund franchise back to life, giving fans the post-apocalyptic action they've been craving since they first saw a metal foot crush a human skull 2 decades ago." However, on CHUD, the latter said Bale's desire to star as John Connor was probably the most fatal blow to the film. It completely distorted the shape of the story as it existed. Furthermore, he expressed that the third act was when the film began falling apart, saying MCG and Nolan muddied the end of the picture, delivering action generics while never finding their own hook that would give this movie more of an impact than you would get from an expanded universe novel. In contrast, James Berardinelli considered the ending the best part of the film, feeling that the first 2/3 were rambling and disjointed, and that the lack of a central villain was only fixed when the T-800 appeared. Betsy Sharkey of the Los Angeles Times stated that Bale's strengths did not serve him or the movie as well here, and that when the story starts to crumble around Bale, Worthington is there to pick up the pieces. Craig Sharp of Film Shaft gave the film 3/5, saying, "If you're looking for action, then this is one damn good film. If it's character depth you're after, then move along, please." A.O. Scott of the New York Times said the film has a brute integrity lacking in some of the other seasonal franchise movies and efficient, reasonably swift storytelling. Ben Lyons and Ben Mankiewicz gave the film a see it and skip it, respectively, on the show at the movies, with the latter mentioning that it is the worst big-budget summer release I've seen in some time. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Star of the preceding 3 films in the series, initially remarked that Terminator Salvation was a great film. "I was very excited, but later reversed this position and said it was awful. It tried hard, not that they didn't try the acting and everything. It missed the boat." Terminator series creator James Cameron considered it an interesting film that he "Didn't hate as much as I thought I was going to," and praised Sam Worthington's performance, but also said he would not return to the franchise. "The series has kind of run its course. Frankly, the soup's already been pissed in by other filmmakers." He also felt his two films were better than either of the later films. Linda Hamilton, who portrayed Sarah Connor in The Terminator and Terminator 2: Judgment Day, and lent her voice to Terminator Salvation, wished the film all the best, but expressed her opinion that the series was perfect with two films. "It was a complete circle, and it was enough in itself. But there will always be those who will try to milk the cow." In Real Power, Hollywood Cinema and American Supremacy, Matthew Alford argued that, with the fourth installment, the franchise had made a clear shift towards supporting establishment narratives, despite its earlier reservations, and that a central theme is whether John Connor should prioritize striking a decisive military blow against the machines, or rescue some captured humans who are entombed, with shades of Auschwitz, by the Terminators. He flash-forwards from the first three Terminator films hinted at a horrible futurescape of pain, deprivation, and ad hoc guerrilla warfare, he writes, but in contrast, producer Jeffrey Silver explained that the Department of Defense gave fantastic cooperation to Salvation, because they recognize that in the future portrayed in this film, the military will still be the men and women who protect us no matter what may come. Alford concludes that, for a world that is set just 15 years after a global nuclear holocaust, the survivors are fancifully healthy, not to mention hairy, and that this normalizes the unthinkable. Cancelled sequel and reboot. While Terminator Salvation was initially intended to begin a new trilogy, production of the fifth film was halted by legal trouble, as well as the Halcyon Company filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, while some anonymous sources insisted that Terminator 5 would be moving forward. The majority of analysts predicted that its future was in jeopardy. In late September 2009, it was announced that the rights to the franchise were once again up for sale as the Halcyon Company tried to pull itself out of bankruptcy. In late October 2009, Halcyon announced it would auction off the rights to future Terminator material, and was seeking $60.70 million, though the only offer made was by director Joss Whedon for $10,000. In December 2009, Halcyon issued a statement saying that they were looking at various options, including sale and refinancing of the rights, with an announcement on the outcome no later than February 1, 2010. On February 8, 2010, an auction was held to determine the owner of the Terminator rights, after studios Sony Pictures and Lionsgate bid separately. Pacificor, the hedge fund that pushed Halcyon into bankruptcy, made a deal for $29.5 million. Pacificor hired an agency to sell off the rights to the franchise. In August 2010, it was reported that a new Terminator film was being developed. The new film would not be a direct sequel to Salvation, but rather an animated reboot of the original series. It would have been entitled Terminator 3000, and would be shot by Hanover House. However, Pacificor, the owner of the rights to the Terminator franchise, had not given any official license to Hanover House to develop a new film. On February 16, 2011, it was announced that Universal Studios was considering a fifth Terminator film, with Arnold Schwarzenegger returning as the star and with Fast Five's Justin Lin directing, along with Chris Morgan as the screenwriter. The discussions for the film had been in the very early stages. On April 27, 2011, it was announced that a rights package to a Terminator film, to which Schwarzenegger, Lin, and producer Robert W. Court were attached but no screenwriter, had been circulating among the studios. Universal, Sony and Lionsgate, and CBS Films had been some of the interested companies. According to sources close to Schwarzenegger, he had only wanted to commit fully if a good script could be created. It was reported on May 13, 2011 that Megan Ellison and her production company Annapurna Pictures won the rights to make at least 2 more Terminator films, including Terminator 5, in an auction deal that is rumored to have hit the $20 million mark. While Schwarzenegger was claimed to be up for a substantial role, the film would not be anchored by him. Instead, a young male actor would take the lead. On December 4, 2012, a year and a half after negotiations were entered, the deal was finally closed. Ellison said that she and her brother David Ellison were starting from scratch as they seek out a screenwriter to plot the end. The new film, now titled Terminator Genesis and intended to be a reboot of the series with an eye to launching a new trilogy, was announced in the summer of 2013, with Schwarzenegger confirming to reprise his role as the T-800. Filming began on April 21, 2014, and the film was released on July 1, 2015. However, despite the film's financial success, it was not well received by critics and fans of the series. James Cameron regained the rights to the film franchise. He and director Tim Miller will supervise the film series after Genesis. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?